What are we talking about? What are we doing? Where are we? Who are we?
We are
The we are the League
of game,
Philosophers,
unscripted
unedited
video game podcast
for you.
to enjoy. It's a good time.
It's a good time. It's a good time.
Yeah,
We're back.
welcome everybody.
We're back.
We're back after a very long time.
Yeah, I don't know how many months it's been.
10, I believe.
Wow.
I think our
Wow.
last was that Final Fantasy chat we had where we were going to invite CRK to talk, and we never did that. So sorry, James.
It's been a minute. Yeah. Yeah.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah. We should get James and Don and just do like a big powwow kind of thing at some
That'd be
point.
awesome. Yeah, that'd be really cool. Be interested to hear some of their perspectives and stuff on things.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Nice. Well, it's good to be back in the speaky seat.
I agree. I made some updates to the office. I've got, okay, so that printer's been there for actually 3 years, but I moved it.
Oh,
and
nice.
I got a new white desk table thing so I can have a desk over here. That way I can write and I can study and do things that I need to do while I'm working.
So look at you being productive.
Super
Very
productive.
Nice. Yeah. I've been trying to make the kitchen fancier.
I see
and
that.
like there's artwork all up and around here, but it's just outside of the frame, which is too bad because I always feel bad that there's just this brown cabinety thing here.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe I'll do some green screening next time.
Oh yeah, that's right. You bought a green screen, didn't you?
I did, yeah. And even did some cool test shots for a potential Raid Force video. And
nice.
then yeah, the holidays happened and everything, and I still want to get back on that. It was just such a like I put so much energy and grind into trying to get that 1cc, and then once I came over for the holidays and played, like I was proud. I got my best score, got a nice 2cc, but then I got home and like all the motivation was just like sapped, So
Yeah.
I've been slowly getting myself back in the groove and just trying to come back and poke it and get it kind of going again, because I just need the footage of getting the 1cc to make this video. But now I'm like struggling with motivation, even though I'm so close, so silly close. But I feel like
what?
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, like, in a funny way, that's like kind of perfect for making a video about struggling to get a 1cc, which is kind of my plan anyways, just to talk through the process. And like, this is what the process is really like, like you get up to it and sometimes you hit these plateaus, and sometimes the plateaus just drop your motivation. And like, all of a sudden, you're back on the slope downward, and like, getting yourself back in the groove is sometimes a little bit tricky, but it's a real honest take on what it's like to do something like this. So yeah, it's good for content. And,
all right.
You're back.
So we're back, everyone. My future husband, I'm
Y'all's are
getting
fiancés
married.
now.
I know. He just called and he was like, "Hey, did you see the new big Nintendo reveal?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
Oh.
And he said, "Well, apparently Amazon leaked something and Nintendo came clean about it." And I said, "Is it a new Switch?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, I don't know if I care, but let's find out."
Oh, okay. Let's do this together.
Yeah, that's what I said. So we're on a podcast, so we'll find out what's going on.
I don't see anything on Kotaku.
Let me check Eurogamer.
Cops accidentally mistake Nintendo Direct for bomb threat.
Oh, is it talking about the price of the new Zelda game?
Or did they bump it up to 70 or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, all right.
Yeah. I was
Whatever.
looking for
I don't care.
Something a little juicier, but
I know
that's okay.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe it also had an attached release date or something.
Yeah, I see some memes about the $70 thing. Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was showing up at 70 before being taken down from the eShop. Yeah, so it's just that.
All right. Who cares? I don't care at all about that. I don't even have a Switch anymore.
Whatever. That's not a big, yeah, it's not a big surprise.
People with these I mean before we get into our actual topic today, I mean people with these modern game prices are cracking my shit up.
Yeah.
Like, forget Neo Geo games in the 90s, cartridge games in the 90s were super expensive. I don't know
Yeah.
what people are remembering. Like a copy
Right.
of Chrono Trigger 1995 cost $80 brand new.
Right.
$80 in 2023 money is over 150 bucks. Like
Yeah.
paying $70 in 2023 money for a game that's going to last you 8 billion freaking hours and have unlimited amounts of gameplay, have at it.
Yeah.
If you find value spending $70, or the new Dead Space remake was 60 bucks, it's going to maybe take you 13 to 14 hours to play through that. But people will happily go to the movie theater. They'll spend $50 on 2 movie tickets, spend another $30 on a large popcorn and a large thing, and be like, I got my money's worth. And I'm like, but you could just stream that or watch that at home basically for free because you're already paying for that stuff, or fucking pirate it. I don't know. Like people's sense of value, one, is very individual, right? What is valuable to one person might not be valuable to another person. People think that I'm an idiot for paying hundreds of dollars for a Neo Geo game. Who cares? It's worth it to me. But my God, like, stop complaining about this stuff. I think people on the internet just like to complain. That's all I.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of like a perception problem and like a scaling issue that happens. And that on one side, we're treated to more amazing gaming bargains than ever before. That
especially
like
Steam.
Exactly, like a Steam holiday sale. You could get so much good content for 60 bucks. You know, you could get 6 different really fantastic games with hundreds of hours of gameplay and stuff. But on the flip side, AAA games brand new, yeah, they're like, say 70 bucks is now the new standard, but the amount of money that goes into producing that game and then the size of the team, the scope of the entire thing is also huge. So I think, yeah, people are on one side feeling this and on one side feeling that, and they're just kind of, I guess, I don't know, getting a little bit of self-induced sticker shock.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I always liked the I think it was Tycho from Penny Arcade. He used, I forget what he called it, but it was basically like the Steel Battalion dollars per hour value proposition, you know. So if anybody hasn't played Steel Battalion, it was just like, I think, what was it, 250 bucks, 300 bucks when it first came out. Huge, giant, amazing, bespoke arcade controller for this one game. And it was fantastic. And like the whole experience itself, you know, maybe you get like 12 hours out of it or something, but every hour that you get was a pretty spectacular hour as you're playing on this amazing controller and super duper immersive. And especially at that time, it was just so unique.
And you played it on your projector, didn't you? So you played it on like a screen that was like I don't know how many feet.
Right. That was such a special place and time, you know, being really into gaming and technology, and like importing a projector from like Korea that I got really cheap and built my own screen for in the basement. Like,
and you could even like, it was on hinges, so you could like hang it on the ceiling and bring it down. I remember playing Metroid Prime on that, and oh man, that was so much fun.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah,
that was really cool.
But yeah, that's the kind of thing. Is like, yeah, you can play any game you want in whatever setting and stuff, but sometimes, you know, you can play that special game and that special setup that, you know, maybe it's worth it for you. I mean, you could also just watch videos of roller coasters and it's completely free. But, you know, paying, you know, 50 bucks to have a day pass at a theme park and experience it in person, very, very different. And it's probably a great value proposition, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. So in the meantime, I don't know, people can cry about Zelda being $70.
That's been something that has been an ongoing kind of an ongoing conversation on the Neo Geo forums. There's been some folks that would be like, hey, I'm trying to get into the Neo Geo. And of course, you know, half of us are, you know, trying to help the people be like, hey, you might need to like, look at some of these things to save money, or you might want to order from these places or stay away from eBay because you're going to be paying a 14 to 15% upcharge, blah, 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 blah. But then like for every person trying to help this person or persons that's exploring wanting to buy these things, you've got, 5 people that are like, oh, it's completely pointless to do all this now. Just buy a Mister. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Emulation's not a new concept. These people have already like thought, I could just emulate this shit, or I could buy this stuff for $8 on the Arcade Archives on PlayStation or Steam or whatever. There's gamers are not ignorant to emulation as an option, especially retro gamers. It's just,
Right.
again, that value proposition, right? What is going to make that experience worth it for you? And I was trying to get my point across. And of course, the Neo Geo forums, everyone just likes drama. So I'm like, y'all need to shut up, because we literally have a thread called Post Your Recent Purchases, where we all go in there and show our absolutely ridiculous waste of money. That would be a waste of money to anyone else. Like, there is this one guy that bought a $400 replica Ghostbusters Proton Pack. What the fuck are you going to do with that? Absolutely nothing, but it looks really cool, right?
Yeah.
Who cares what you spend your money on, whether it's a Neo Geo game that costs $3,000 or an LP that costs $30? It's still not really needed these days. You don't need physical media, except for those things that have never had a digital dump.
Yeah.
But by and large, most of what people interact with has been dumped. You can get it digitally, easily, even, and for free most of the time.
Yeah. Kind of goes almost back to, I don't know, like a commentary or an argument with consumerism as well. Like, so much of our lives, you don't need much. In most things, if you really wanted it, cheap or free, it is more or less available. It's just a matter, we really get to choose what we want to actually invest in.
Yep. Yeah, that's kind of where it lands. I don't know. I have no patience for comments like that. Like, oh, just get a Mister. Shut up. They didn't ask about how to get a Mister, and even that comes with its own numerous amount of caveats. Good luck finding all the parts right now. It's a tinkerer's toy, so you gotta, F with it and set things up and do a whole lot of stuff. And some people just like plug and play. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to pay for it for the convenience of that, awesome.
Yeah. These are like the same people that would hang out in a museum and be like, I could just get a poster of this.
Right. Yeah. You go and like see like this amazing Monet and be like, well, I bought a poster of that for $5 at the library the other day.
Did you know for $10 you can get a jigsaw puzzle with this same image?
It's just that whole like, well, actually mentality. I just can't deal with it.
Yeah, that's something that my patience as I get older has just kind of fallen off. The second you start to hear that, like, well, actually, I'm like, whoop. Just already walking out the door.
Oh, that's ridiculous. All right. Anyway, total tangent on that. But hey,
yeah.
So everybody, the next Breath of the Wild is going to cost $70. So make sure you save an extra $5 a month until the game comes out. So you can get Breath of the Wild too.
Yeah. Or boycott Nintendo and get your little angry pitchforks out and get to work.
I wonder if that means the special edition is going to cost $95 instead of $80.
Oh shit. You're right.
And it's going to have some stickers and an art book.
Stickers?
That's what all these special editions have nowadays, like an art book, a sticker set, and maybe like a special edition soundtrack that has like 3 tracks from the game on it. What the hell are you going to do with all that stuff? It just sits in the box. You put the box on a shelf. You play the game, but everything else just sits in the box. I don't have any love for special editions in my old age.
Yeah. Oh, we're so crotchety. I love it.
I know. I love it. Old 40-year-old, older than 40-year-old, 40. We'll be 42 this year. Anyway, what's our topic today, Chris?
I have no clue. We are talking about like the types, the archetypes of fighting gamers.
Yeah.
You could really just say gamers too. I think these like archetypes probably apply to anybody who's approaching something sufficiently complicated, you know.
Mhm.
But it certainly is a big thing with fighting games. And these were originally from, what was it, Core Gaming? Is that what we eventually
Yeah,
tracked the video down from?
so there was a Core A gaming video from a while ago called the three types of fighting game players. And I'll put a link in the doobly-doo below for everybody so you can check it out. It's a fantastic video. And they go through the three types of gamers: the brains, the heart, and the body. But what got Chris and I started about this
Hmm.
was a quotation from David Foster Wallace that he put in one of our Discord chats the other day. What's that from,
Yeah.
Chris?
This is from a book called Infinite Jest, which is a book about a young man and a very grueling university and he's in a super competitive tennis program. And it's one of the coaches that's talking about the different kinds of players that he sees. And there's like the obsessive type that's just constantly drilling the game and everything with it, but also kind of gets burnt out rather quickly. And then you also have the, what does he say the other type is, like the despairing type, where he's only in it as long as it's easy sailing, you know.
Yeah.
He's on that nice easy, you know, beginner gains, as they say in like the gym community, where everything's going fine. But then the second you hit any kind of resistance or plateauing, they immediately just kind of walk away from the entire game.
Right.
And then in between that you have what he calls the complacent type, which
Yep.
the actual quote, let's see here, was the complacent type improves radically until he hits a plateau and is content with the radical improvement he's made to get to the plateau, and doesn't mind staying at the plateaus because it's comfortable and familiar. He doesn't worry about getting off, and pretty soon you find that he's designed a whole game around compensating for the weaknesses and chinks in the armor the given plateau represents in his game. His whole game is based on his plateau now. And then little by little, guys he used to beat start beating him, locating the chinks out of the plateau, and his rank starts to slide. But he'll say he doesn't care. He says he's in it for the love of the game, and he always smiles, but there gets to be some sort of tight and hang dog about his smile. And he always smiles and is real nice to everybody and is real good to have around. But he keeps saying where he is while the other guys have plateaus. And he gets beat more and more, and he's content until one day there's a knock at the door. David Foster Wallace. I've never read that out loud. It's interesting how rambly
Yeah.
he is. I think that's like one sentence, actually, now that I'm looking at it, practically. Yeah.
Yeah, it was I was actually reading that as you were going. And yeah, and of course I'll have that up on the screen for everybody while you're reading it. That way people can suss that out too. But yeah, so he put that quote in Discord, and I had a big falling out a few years ago with Street Fighter V. I put almost 300 hours into that game, and I hit a hard plateau, and I rebelled against that plateau really hard. I'll talk about that in a bit, but Chris, being the thoughtful friend that he is, sent me a text. He's like, "Hey, I didn't want to feel like I was calling you out or anything." I'm like, no, not at all. I didn't even think about that. But I'm glad he put that quote in there, because it really made me think about, one, the video from Core Gaming that we had watched years ago. I think that video is 7 years old now. But then as I dug in and I found out where that was from, that actually comes from a League of Legends theory about the types of League of Legends players. And there's a few people that I will make sure to credit in the doobly-doo down below for who actually wrote this, because none of these ideas are our own. We're going to be talking about those, but I just want to say, like, these aren't, our own ideas. I don't want to say we own these, and I want to make sure to give credit for the original authors and of these ideas and theories. But so Core gaming goes down to, put these three different archetypes of fighting gamers, or three different types of League of Legends gamers, into a fighting game lexicon, which I thought was really helpful. And they identified three types here: the brains, the heart, and the body. And as we pick apart what David Foster Wallace said, I think it's going to be interesting to kind of see those parallels in the three archetypes that you find in fighting game players.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Chris, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with like that complacence conversation, or get into the three types of fighting game players and then come back around to that?
I think we should come back, because I think the three archetypes help explain how somebody moves through these different phases and types, and like the complacent type, being I think the David Foster Wallace quote, he sees it almost as like, this is where you end up, and it kind of predicts where you're going to go. But the reality of it is, although maybe you'll find yourself identifying with one or another, the reality of it is that we're all moving through this different scale at different times.
Right.
Everybody, when they pick up a brand new game, they become, as Wallace would call it, the despairing type. In that everything is easy going, especially if you played fighting games before and you start a new one and you're now breezing through, wood rank, bronze rank, or whatever. That's a wonderful place to be. Like you're just kicking back on your yacht as you're just like tick, 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 just getting your little wins and watching your rank go up, and like easy breezy, just sunshine all day long. And then the second somebody checks you, if you finally hit that like high silver league or something, and you run into somebody else who's doing the same thing, they're actually a high level player and they're just coming through the ranks. You'll have that moment where you're going to get your first real loss and you're going to lose points. And then the rain clouds appear and your little boat's getting, rained on. And most people, they just feel a little bit of despair. And then, it shifts just a little bit. Now, some people, that'll be the end of the day. They're just going to walk right out the door and be like, well, that was nice. Now I'm done because I don't like losing. But, most people, it's more of just a small emotional hit. And then you dust yourself off and you go back and maybe play some more. And it kind of oscillates like that. And then as you really start to improve and try to work on a game, that's when you really find the shifts, and that the shifts are actually paramount for progress, that it's super important to sometimes be the heart player and to understand your intuitive plays. Sometimes it's really important to be the, I don't know, what did he call the other archetype? The tactician or the thinker or something?
The brains.
The brains. Yeah. Yes, sometimes it's really important to stay there. And oftentimes it's a really good way to identify what you need to work on to make the improvement. I fall into this trap of being too much of the brains player. Like I'll play a few sets and I'll have a hard time with a matchup. And I'll lab out all sorts of stuff and I'll figure it out and I will have solutions for everything. But I won't actually just hop online and start grinding the matches and playing it, which is more the heart part, where you're like, okay, I'm just going to intuitively flow with this. It's a little easy for me just to figure it all out, solve it in my head. Then I'm more comfortable knowing that I'm right without having to go and be proven wrong or run into a situation where I maybe have the solution, but I can't execute the solution yet. So again, it kind of shifts and moves and stuff like that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think I want to read these definitions and I'll have them up on the screen for everybody as we go through these.
That's a good place to start.
But I also, kind of playing off everything you just said, I think because that's some good context to really think about, that we all move through these three different archetypes, I think, during our fighting game journey with a single game, right? Because like any sort of personality test or anything, as you start to see these things, you're gonna be like, yep, that's me, yep, that's me, yep, that's me, because humans like to look for patterns. That's what we do. And we associate ourselves with the things that we're like, oh, yep, that's me, so that means blah, 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 I do this. Be careful about that. One, because it's not always true. We like to tell ourselves stories. But two, again, like you said, we move through this process. Like everything in our lives is a process. The other thing that I want to add to that before I share these definitions is it also depends on the context of the situation that you're in. So, and I want to bounce back to this later when I start talking about Street Fighter V a little bit, because something that I just thought about was the context of me playing that game competitively was entirely online before they implemented rollback netcode.
Ah, yeah.
How good was I actually at the game live compared to online? And I don't have a barometer for that, because playing
Mm.
online, especially the first couple years of Street Fighter V, was fucking rough.
Hmm.
It was rough. Like, you could not time your moves correctly. So regardless of the amount of time that you spent in the lab, you would often have to deal with all of that inherent input lag on your display from the
Right.
network, from the person's ping. Like, all these things kind of went into it. So your experience, and even though you can like add lag inside of training mode, still your experience is going to be very unique depending on the context of the situation that you're in the moment. So what are those variables too? So I think this is a good cautionary tale of, it's more than just identifying an archetype, or more than just identifying how you're moving through something. It's the
Hmm.
context in which you're moving through that thing and experiencing that thing. So context is exceedingly important.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And as you just explained, context changes.
Mm-hmm.
Revisiting a game after a patch changes the context.
Yep.
As new characters come out, they change matchups. That changes the context. As netcode gets improved and changed. And also like local context changes. If you start playing with a regular person locally, all of a sudden, of course, especially if you have bad netcode,
Yeah.
you can actually start forming muscle memory that's off timing and
Yes.
messes up, your ranked games.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. All right, so context is important. So everybody keep that in the back of your mind. So
Mhm.
let's give you these three. Now, Chris, do you think we should give the definition and then talk about what that is, and then give the next one and talk about that, or give all three and then talk about them?
Um, let's go through all three and then we'll talk about them. How about that?
I think that's good. Yeah, giving a
Okay.
good overview there. It's usually what I do with my folks in workshops anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So the brains player is a player who loves their game's practice and training tools. They spend hours and hours finding combos, options, and devouring hitbox and frame data to help them craft the perfect response to every situation with minimal risk to themselves or their goals. That's important.
Mm-hmm.
Brains players lose out in unfamiliar territory, though. So, for example, in League of Legends, the best reference to this would be when a new champion is released and a brain player knows nothing about the champion's capability. Translate that to fighting games, you get new
Yeah.
characters added for season passes, things like that. Without putting the time in to study and practice against that champ or that new character, the brain player is going to be playing within their weaknesses.
Yeah.
So that's huge. You can spend so much time learning how to play a game, but at the end of the day, once those new variables or new context is added, your entire game can fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
So think about the heart. The heart player is a player that plays with their emotions and intuition. They ride the edge by playing mind games with their opponents, conditioning them through patterns and repetition, and then making predictions within the heat of the moment to best their foes. In the fighting game community, this is called making reads. And when you've got someone's read, or you kind of have their play style or what you think they're going to do like downloaded into your brain, it can often distort your opponents and cause them to lose focus or their will to win. That's an interesting phrase.
It's so deep.
Right. Heart players thrive against brain players as they love those moments of unfamiliarity. A heart
Yeah.
player will play the new champion, not know the full extent of the champ's kit, and best a brain player every day of the week simply because they're willing to take risk and limit test themselves in the wild rather than in a controlled environment like training mode.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, we have the body. So body players are your mechanical geniuses. The physical capability to execute on their chosen characters within their chosen game is pushed to the limits, and these players strive to be unmatched if the contest came down to skill alone. These players will best heart players every day through sheer consistency, while they falter against brain players for not always having all of their options covered. I could think of a really good example for a body player would maybe be somebody like Desk,
Yeah.
where the
Yeah.
skill level is crazy high. But if
Mm-hmm.
I'm not mistaken, I believe he's been interviewed in the past and he's like, I'm not a good tournament player. You're not ever really
Yeah.
going to see me playing tournaments,
Yep. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
interesting.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's start up here with the brains. And prior to us getting on here, Chris was, we were, trying to suss out like which ones we think we most naturally fall into. So like we said, we
Yeah.
fall into all of these at different times, depending on the context, but where is our most natural? And I think, Chris, you said yours is probably the brains.
Yeah, I really like figuring out the tactics, the strategy behind these games. And for me, picking up a character and understanding how they play in a game is sort of like piloting something.
Mm-hmm.
I like to understand their movement. I like to understand how their approach is, what works, what's safe for them, what's not safe. For me, it's paramount to approaching a game, because otherwise it's like as if I'm playing chess but I don't know all of the moves of the different pieces. Like,
Yeah.
I want to know everything about the character and how it works. Now there's certainly a ceiling to that, it takes a long time to really know it all, but after playing games for so many years, eventually you start to quickly understand what you're looking for. That there's this kind of particular pieces and parts that you need to suss out in order to put the plan together. But the reason it works for me is because one of my favorite places to be with a fighting game is in the training mode. I love just putting on music and just exploring, just figuring stuff out and exploring. And that's a thing that a lot of people they almost view that like going to the dentist. Like, I love playing fighting games, but don't make it work. Don't turn it into this analytical Excel spreadsheet kind of thing where I need to know frame data and whatnot. I find all of that stuff super fascinating, but certainly not everybody does. Right. And I think that's why I naturally kind of fall into that category. It just kind of suits me. Yeah. You, on the other hand, you would say you're probably more of like the heart player, right?
I am, but let's bounce back to the brains real quick.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was interesting. So a few weeks ago, you sent me a few questions. Maybe it's a couple months ago. I don't know. I'm old. You sent me a couple questions on Facebook Messenger, kind of about my approach to training mode.
Oh, right. Yeah.
In fighting games. And, you ask, do I use the recording functions and things like that? Because recording functions in fighting games have been around since what? Street Fighter 4 had recording?
It did.
Yep. Yeah. I got really good at Street Fighter 4. I will hang my hat on that. I have
you put a ton of time in.
Probably still have a killer Vega, but I never once used recording functions in Street Fighter 4 ever. Yeah. Once I found something that I felt I needed to overcome, I would just naturally do that in match play. I wanted to do that in match play because there's all sorts of other variables in context that I'm thinking about where, okay, if I figure out how to get around this one thing, I get really focused on that one thing. And then I always look for that one thing, and then I stop looking for all the other things.
With that kind of tunnel vision.
Right, yeah. So for me, bouncing back to the heart thing, me as what I would probably consider a more natural heart player, I want that whole well-rounded experience. I need to focus on this thing or how to get past this thing or how to move past this matchup or this one move that X character does that my main character can't get past. But I want to do that within the context of also learning the entire thing. And I think eventually the brain player gets around to that, right?
Yeah.
Where it might take me longer to suss out what that one thing is, that's my hang up, but I might have a better overall view of the entire matchup than the brain player in that one instance, right? So there's this like interesting push and pull. And it's not that the heart player, like I don't like, or that's it's not that I don't like training mode. I do like training mode, and I'll jump into training mode and just to like maybe figure out some combos or something that I really like in modern fighting games are trials. I think trials are great because it helps you to really quickly figure out what your character can and can't do. Most of the combos that you do in trials are not really viable combos you're going to try in the game, but moving through those helps you to figure out what you can and cannot link, what you can 2-in-1 into, where what your recovery on different moves is like, what counters can do, because there are some combos you can do out of counters and not. So it really helps you to get a
Yeah.
really good grasp of your character without spending hours and hours and hours into training mode trying to figure all that out kind of by yourself. And so me as a
Yeah.
heart player, I love trials.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's like a really nice um like a way to bridge the gap, I think, for the
Mm-hmm.
different play styles. I remember asking you that question because we were just kind of theory crafting in terms of game design.
Yeah.
What would be a way to get somebody more engaged with a training mode if just going into the lab and setting up all the variables wasn't their cup of tea? Because
Right.
that's the thing is like doing that, you basically are creating your own little chess problems,
Mm-hmm.
which is fun to solve, but it also means that you need to like set up the board. You need to like set it up for the recording of the situation and then get in there and explore it. And it's honestly, it's time consuming. It's not always intuitive. It's usually a bit clunky and stuff.
Right.
Now the newer fighting games, like Street Fighter 6, I feel like that one's actually going to have one of the best training modes ever.
You probably
Um,
will, yeah.
but it probably won't solve that issue. Like it'll probably have trials and stuff. But one thing that I think that we were proposing in that discussion was like, what if we designed a way so that you could play a match online and it would basically record the
Yeah.
match, and then it would go back and pick out like three uh, highlighted portions where you could have maybe had an option or get a chance to redo something. Like your opponent jumps in on you and you miss your anti-air.
Yeah.
And then the game would basically be like, hey, while you're waiting for your next match, do you want to just replay this 5 or 6 times and practice that anti-air right in that moment, or optimizing a punish, or maybe you dropped a combo. Do you want to practice that combo over again?
Right.
And like, I actually feel like that's pretty viable because at this point, replays are done by entirely storing all of the inputs of both players, and then it just recreates it in the engine itself. So as long as there was a smart system that could recognize some of those opportunities, boil down the inputs into small segmented modules, and then let you just kind of drill them on the fly, I feel like that would be awesome. But
And in our world of pretty sophisticated AI, I
mhm.
think you could easily train an AI to look for those kinds of things. And
Yeah,
that really goes back to, I mean, really just management 101 and providing people feedback, right? Feedback
yeah,
needs to be balanced, specific, and timely. Balanced meaning
mhm.
that, you need a good balance of developmental and positive feedback. Hey, this is where, blah, 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 you might need to, suss up these things. At the same time, your approach here was good because you did these things, right? And
Yeah.
that's that specificity. I can never say that right.
Mhm.
But then also timely. So having a function like that, where right after a ranked match, you lose that ranked match, your emotions are like this high, or maybe even through the roof, or maybe they're somewhere out by the moon, right? You are just so energized, and you're like, what did I do wrong? I did
Yeah.
everything right in that match, and you just can't think clearly. The ability to select a thing on the menu, and instead of looking for your next match to get pissed off again or whatever, because you probably shouldn't play when you're that pissed off, right? So instead of that, there might be a little
Yeah.
option on the menu that says review or feedback or something. You click on
Mhm.
that, it does your replay, and then the AI kicks in and it's like, hey, and then it like does a stop frame. Right here, you should have done this option because it would have had this result against this character's move,
Yeah. Yeah.
and tell you your option, or maybe your options, right? Maybe you could identify what that maximum option would be for the most damage, or here's a few other things you could have done at least to knock them out or get a
Mhm.
counter or a reversal somehow, right?
Yeah.
That timely feedback, I think, is so important with fighting games. And if you have a new fighting game player that is just learning the genre through a particular game, so Chris and I learned this last year with our friend Don from Instagram, who was learning how to play fighting games with King of Fighters 15, and we're like, are you nuts? But that's what he wanted to do. And he actually
Yeah,
got
more
pretty
power.
good with King and a few other characters. I was really impressed with the amount of growth that I saw. But he had that amazing growth, not because of what he was doing online in ranked matches, because he was sitting there with 30-year fighting game veterans like me and Chris and our friend James, telling him, what he should do when he does something incorrect, being like, hey, maybe you should try something here, or let's just stop fighting for a second and practice this thing that you need to do with this character in order to win, period, right?
Yeah.
And he got so much from that because you had that really specific, balanced, and timely feedback that happened in the moment. And you don't get that in competitive play.
Right, right. Yeah. And you also get the added bonus of like when something goes a little bit wrong and say you have that clutch moment, it's round 3, 1-1, and you drop the combo or you miss the opportunity. And there's a bit of that like face palm of like, man, like I wish I could go back and fix that, or redo it. Well, the beauty of these games is they actually have the opportunity to do that. Like go back, practice the clutch thing. I really like exploring different kind of like elements of self-education, like how I can get around and train my brain to do different things in different situations. And I probably told you this story before, but I got really interested in trying to study the clutch moment. I'm like, how do I actually practice clutchness? And my solution to it is because I was playing a lot of darts at the time, is I could get a bullseye, usually in like, I don't know, about 1 in 8 throws, something like that. So what I would do is I would put a pizza in the oven and I would wait until the timer went off. So the pizza's done cooking. And then I would start throwing my darts. And I would only take the pizza out if I hit a bullseye. So all of a sudden I'm introducing this, innocent and harmless, but kind of real pressure. And all of a sudden, I'm 11, 12 darts in and I haven't hit it yet. And I can start to smell the pizza burning. But it allowed me to create a small like capsulization of that moment to be able to practice it, which is a weird roundabout way, but it was kind of fun at the same time. These games, though, they actually have the opportunity to do that, though, without burning pizza. Like they could actually give you the moment back. And it's cool that we are starting to see that happen. Tekken 7, in one of its patches that it released, I think it was the patch that they introduced frame data as a paid DLC, which is ridiculously dumb. But they also introduced a mode where you could go back and you could watch replays of your match, and you could pause it and it would do something like the short version of what we're explaining. Like if you hit a particular moment or you got hit, it would just put a little frame data thing up saying, hey, these moves could punish that, or you could have these options. It wasn't as dialed in as we're saying, and like giving you segmented pieces that you could then replay on the fly, but I think we're getting there. If only game developers would listen to us.
I think then that somebody between the brains and the heart might be that complacent player. And before we get into like really doing a deep dive in that, something I just thought of, and I mean, this isn't something that's just a problem I identified as a problem. I don't think it's just a problem with modern fighting games, but bloated rosters. King of Fighters is horrible to have bloated rosters. But
a lot of characters.
The one thing that's interesting about, say, like classic King of Fighters rather than modern King of Fighters, and there's a clear distinction, especially starting with KOF 13. KOF 13, 14, and 15, the emphasis is on creating really long combo strings. Really long combo strings. KOF, classic KOF, not the focus. The focus was creating those really great moments out of all the mechanics and the footsies and the movement options you had to open up and do, maybe a 6-7 hit combo, but certainly not these like crazy 13, 14, 15, 25 hit strings, or watching Vanessa carry a character from one side of the screen all the way to the other side of the screen. And she only had 1 fucking meter, right?
Yeah. And mind you, when this is happening, as the you being comboed, you there's nothing to do.
You can't
there's
do
no combo
anything.
breaker. There's you just wait. Yeah.
Unlike Killer Instinct that had a fucking combo breaker in 1984. So anyway, my point with that is once you get a roster that's like 36 characters, 50 characters huge, right? And then you also add in all of those complex combo mechanics on top of that, all of a sudden that finding out how to get around each of those matchups and that 40, 50 character roster becomes a much larger chunk of work that you
Mm-hmm.
have to put into the game. And there's a lot of people that get turned off of fighting games because they cannot learn that many matchups with that many variables. And I use King of Fighters as this thing because there is that really clear dichotomy between the classic approach and the modern approach with the fighting engines. Even though the movement options are the same, the combo options are entirely different.
That's right.
So the 38 character roster in King of Fighters 98, to me, I mean, yes, I have almost 26 years of play
We've
with
been
this
playing
game.
it a while. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, it's easier to digest matchup data for 36 characters when each character literally has maybe 4 or 5 viable combos that they can do or should do mid-match to get max damage, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you think of something like KOF 15, there's, compared to that, an infinite number of variables there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody starts their combos differently. Although one thing that was driving me crazy with KOF 15 is everyone started their combos like classic Guilty Gear with 2 light
Yeah.
hits, and then all of
Two
a
two
sudden
crouching light
they kill you.
kicks. Yeah. Yeah.
That was driving me nuts a little bit. But if I were to sit here and complain about the game. But yeah, so matchup data is really hard to get. The larger that roster gets, and then the larger the roster gets, the more complex the mechanics are, it becomes even harder.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like this escaping goal that just quickly runs away from you, especially if you weren't playing the game on launch, to come in much later. And that's a really hard thing to bridge the gap for newer players. But I guess the upside though, is that, I get, which is, I have like 3 thoughts at once, but I think a lot of people shy away from ranked matches in general because it's like a high stress kind of thing. All of a sudden you feel it in your chest. There's a little bit more anxiety. You have a lot more emotions going on about the game and whatnot. But it's actually a really, really good thing to do, especially as a new player, because what's going to happen is you're going to get, plateaued in Bronze League or something. And that might feel bad because of the lack of, perceived progress.
Right.
But really, it's a total blessing. That's keeping you from just getting trounced by other players who have all of this knowledge. It allows you to kind of slowly work through it. And it's one of those things that just because you played fighting games for 20 years, it doesn't mean you're also just going to fall right into the high diamond league or something.
Right.
I went back and started to play some Street Fighter V with a new character, that Akira, that they added towards the end. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to tool around with this, and decided to jump back in the ranked leagues, and immediately was demoted like back to silver. Yeah. And there's a bit of that ego check. And
right.
Yeah, okay, well, but again, it's actually a blessing as long as you can get past that sting, because now things are slowed down enough that you can start exploring and figure out how to fill in all the little knowledge gaps.
And I think that's kind of where the complacent kind of gamer goes in. And
yeah,
I mean, as an older fighting game player, I've never played super high level tournament play or anything like that. That's not me. That's never been me. I just really enjoy playing with my friends. But fighting games, I would say by and large, for the amount of fighting games that I actually own and the amount of time I spend with video games, it's probably my most played genre overall, thinking about my entire life. And I have such we were talking about this the other day, I have such a wide body of knowledge when it comes to at least elementary understanding of a huge swath of fighting games, from their mechanics, the game feel, hit detection, hitbox data, the type of combo mechanics a player can expect in a certain type of game, how links work, things that are like in KOF 98, most of your super moves have tons of invincibility on startup. Most KOF games don't, right? So you can approach, different little nuance things like that. And I know all that stuff for a lot of different games. So when I jumped in to play King of Fighters 15 last year to help our friends James and Don train for Evo, I really hadn't played the game all that much. I had played it for maybe 20 hours on Steam when it first came out. This is months later, and I did not spend enough time with that game to really get any combos down with any characters. And I played with my buddy James, and he, at the end of it, he could probably tell, he's like, okay, either Mike can't play fighting games at all and he just says he can, or he hasn't really played this. And it was really interesting because a week later we were playing, but we weren't playing KOF 15, we were playing KOF 2K2.
Yeah, different
And
story, right?
and the second match, he goes, okay, this, I'm playing against an entirely different person. And I'm like, no, you're playing against a person that knows how to play classic KOF. I don't know fuck all about KOF 15. Give me a week.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I took Rio and Cronin into the lab, and I got them out of the lab in 1 week. And I came back and I could stand toe to toe with somebody that was playing that game for over 70 hours. And I had spent maybe 5 hours with the game.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That's
and
that old school knowledge.
right, yeah. So I mean, I'm not saying that to be like, I'm the best fighting game player, because I'm not. The second I get into ranked matches in KOF 15, I get trounced, which is fine. But that goes back to a little bit of that complacent archetype that I see in myself. And my older age, because I've been playing fighting games for a long time, I'm very involved in my actual like career, like what I do. And I have so many different interests, and fighting games are not the only type of game that I play. Like, I'm really enjoying the Dead Space remake right now. I'm enjoying the fuck out of that. I want to do a new game plus the second I'm done with the game, because I'm liking it so much. But I'm a little complacent with fighting games right now because I want to be just good enough to be competitive with my friends. And once my friends like reach another plateau or something like that, I play them maybe for a few hours against a few matches, and I'm like, okay, I see what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. So this is kind of the stuff I need to be thinking about, as I'm jumping into training mode. So when
Yeah.
that happens, I jump back and forth between a brain and a heart player. I'm using that heart player to figure out where my friends are, and then I'm turning into a brain player in order to maybe think about a little bit more critically. I'm not using like the recording functions, but I'm thinking more critically about how to get past a few things. A great
Yeah.
example of that, I'll let you talk in just a second. A great example of that was I was playing with a dude from Instagram that I've been talking to for a few years. We had never had a chance to play, and he knows that I like Street Fighter 2 hyper fighting. Love hyper fighting. And I'm pretty damn good with Guile. Well, this guy's apparently pretty damn good with Geef. And I didn't realize, it's been a long time since I played that game more competitively, I didn't realize that Geef can lock you down and block stun from a standing hard kick. And you're in block stun long enough that unless you have a 1-frame invincibility move, he's going to get an SPD for
Scary.
free. For free. And so in the middle of the match, I was like, all right, stop. I was like, what can I do to counter that? Instead of getting frustrated by that moment, being like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Hey, man, do you know what I can do to counter that? I know there has to be a way out of this. And he was like, yeah, you have to have a 1-frame invincibility. So you're playing with Guile, probably your flash kick, Ryu, sure you can, but you have to guess that read. It's a 50-50. He might not go for that SPD. He might block and then get a counter. So there's some mind games there, but that's where I'm like always bouncing back and forth between that brain and the heart, also being kind of a complacent player, just want to be good enough to compete with my friends. Okay, there you go.
How cool to be able to be in a situation where you can change from heart mode to brain mode literally mid-match. That you can stop and be like, hey, let's put on our thinky hats and like explore this, and open it up. This is often the criticism that Japanese players used to have for American players, because the Japanese players would all hang out and congregate in an arcade. And like, that was the fun thing to do, is they would all hang out and talk through situations and practice them with each other. They were very communal about it. Whereas in America, it was all, East Coast versus West Coast, and my arcade versus your arcade, and even in the arcade, I want to be the top dog. Everybody wants to, hang on to your technology, and you save it until finals. Like there's a lot of coveting, and it just wasn't the same kind of communal feel. But it just highlights how important that is, that if you have a good relationship with whoever you're playing and with yourself, so you don't get frustrated, that you can actually just stop and be like, okay, let's work through these options. You will level up so much faster. And it's just more fun too. It really kind of takes the heat off of things. But yeah, good example of just how that changes though. And and the complacency. I run into this as well. Like I've been super into pinball lately.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great quote by, I think his name was like Richard Sheep or Sharper or something like that. He's the guy that famously played pinball back in the day to prove that it was a game of skill.
Okay. I've seen something about
Yeah,
that guy. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
this
I know what you're talking
fantastic
about.
documentary called Special When Lit, I believe. It's
That's where I saw that. Yeah. I watched that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so good, so
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he's a really really well-spoken guy, and he's talking about playing the game, and how a lot of players see it as like me versus the game,
Yeah.
that they need to fight against this thing, and this thing is trying to take their money and whatnot. But really, it's a cooperative thing. It's you and the game. You're
Yeah.
both working together to keep this whole thing moving and playing and whatnot. And I feel like that's a big part of what people don't understand and maybe think is just complacency.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can remember playing 98 with you back in the day. And there would often be times where we're playing and we're just doing it for such just love of the game
Yeah.
that we're creating crazy situations for the fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it's not the smartest thing to counter a super with a super or go for the big bombastic thing or but we would do it for the joy of it,
Right. Yeah.
and that's kind of a sweet place to be. That's where I'm always striving to be when I play these games. Like I want to find the finesse and the control so that I'm not fighting against the game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing with the game,
Yeah.
and I don't necessarily want to fight against the player. I want to dance with them. I want to play
Mm-hmm.
around, and
Yeah.
sometimes that's by being encouraging and setting up things. Like sometimes it's by creating a cheeky little trap to really point it out, like, hey, look what I'm doing. I want you to
Mm-hmm.
figure this out. I'm going to play the puzzle master for a moment and create this setup, and I'm going to do it a few times so that you get to weave through it and figure your way out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that might look like somebody being like, oh, they're just not taking the game seriously anymore. They're not playing so that they can win Evo or whatnot. But honestly, like if you don't want to get burnt out, and if you just have a true love for these games,
Mm-hmm.
that I think is a really good path to take. One that you still have creative, inspiration, and just a fun factor at the core of it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It made me think about like all this talking about like, if you have a moment like, if you know somebody in a game, like, hey, can we stop and talk about this for a second?
Mm-hmm.
I remember this one thing that happened between Chris and I's buddy Alex. This was
Mm-hmm.
years ago, probably 13, 14 years ago, a long time ago when we were all into Street Fighter 4. And you had just recently moved to where you live now, and Alex was still local, so he came over. And if he watches this, man, no hard feelings about this situation, none at all.
Well,
Um, but I remember this one thing. I can't remember who he was playing with. I of course was playing with Vega, right? And in Street Fighter 4, air throws are really strong because they can't be broken. And they just grab you out of the air. And he kept
mm-hmm.
on jumping. And I kept air throwing him. Every time he would jump, I would just jump up and air throw him. And I remember he got so mad. He was like, doing all that doesn't make you a good player. And I'm like, dude, then stop jumping. like what are you trying to do here that you continue to jump? Because from what I know, we're playing a competitive match.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do the thing that I know is going to be the most effective in the moment.
Yeah.
If I can do it. With Vega, I don't have an anti-air. What am I going to do? I'm probably going to air throw you if I see that jump coming from a mile away, right?
Yeah.
So it really depends on who you're playing, context, things like that. But in that moment, I didn't have enough. I mean, we were in our mid to late 20s. I didn't have the maturity, one that I do now as a 42-year-old human, but also I didn't have the competitive chops to literally stop and be like, hey, you're getting frustrated. Let's
Mm-hmm.
step back and figure out what you're trying to do so we can work this out. And that didn't happen. And looking back, of course, hindsight 2020, you wanted that to happen.
Right.
But yeah, it's that kind of thing where it's so important to be able to bounce between the brains and the heart.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we haven't really talked much about the execution player,
The body.
the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I will say for me the first time I ever realized the body moment player in me was trying to learn how to do a combo in Street Fighter 2 with Ryu. So I'm playing on the Super Nintendo, my kid, and the way I discovered it was to crouch, hit medium punch, or I mean fierce punch, and hold the button, and
Negative
then I
edge.
would, yeah, do the quarter circle forward and let go.
Yeah.
And I would get negative edge, which I didn't even know was a thing back then. And I would get the 2-in-1. The punch would cancel into the combo. But that was a super special moment because I felt like it kind of felt like a cheat code, but I was doing it in the moment, which felt more dance-like, and it had to be done, with timing and finesse and precision. The only time I could actually ever pull it out was after I could get a dizzy. Then I could walk up
Right.
and, and do my little thing. And then fast forward, we're playing games and you get used to practicing all the different moves and stuff like that. And you get better at combos. But then when I moved out here to Texas, I started playing against a group of people at Arcade UFO that all were just way a step above, and I lost a lot. And I had to actually start spending real time going into the lab and practicing and figuring things out. And that's kind of where I found a little bit of a joy that to me always reminded me of like what maybe like playing music, like and practicing a sequence, over and over and over, trying to hit some of these one frame links and learning to piano my fingers in order to cover the input window, and really kind of tightening up all of that kind of stuff. And that became a joy in itself, just doing execution. I still find it really, really pleasing and fun to do.
I think for me, I mean, there's definitely a little bit of that. Thinking about that Street Fighter moment, I don't think I've ever shared this story with you. No? I remember the first time, the very first combo I ever learned how to do was a close standing fierce punch into Dragon Punch.
Okay, yeah.
And I remember sitting there on my Super Nintendo with my copy of World Warrior, and I kept on pressing start on the second player controller because there was no thing, but I had seen people do this in the arcade, and I'm like, how do you do this? And so 10, 11-year-old Mike is sitting there doing his crazy little training mode. But I mean, that showed me that I need to be able to execute, right? And I think a big part of that body player, or turning into that body player, and I think every skilled, and when I say skilled, I mean every fighting game player that actually is worth their salt and can actually play a game rather than just kind of flail at a game, turns into a bit of a body player, just for the fact that they have to stop button mashing. You have to be intentional with your buttons. You have to be. And that's
interesting.
Yeah. And it's that moment where you recognize you're being intentional with what buttons you press. And it could be intentional as I'm throwing, this punch out because I know it's going to counter this move because I know this matchup, right? So you're, say you're playing with Guile, that forward fierce punch is that long back fist. Someone throws a fireball, you block it, whoosh, smack you in the face if you're close enough, right? To do that particular move. But there's also times where you might throw out and intentionally whiff for spacing. So to use a Guile or a charge character again, especially with Guile, I might be like just about half screen distance away, but I don't know what the other character is going to do. They're far enough away, no matter what they do, they're 9 times out of 10, they don't have a move that's going to hit me. So to stop myself from moving, I might not want to go down back. I might throw out a quick light punch, and that'll stop me from moving, right? So there's different times where you're going to use different buttons, not always for an attack, most of the times for an attack, but not always for an attack, but you have to be intentional with your buttons. So I think every fighting game player embodies the body.
Yeah. 100%. And so much so that, like you mentioned, the first hurdle is to stop button mashing. Like everybody must cross that little barrier before you actually really start playing.
Right.
And then it just kind of continues from there. I've always liked thinking about the characters I play as sort of like a marionette, like I feel like I am the puppeteer. And the more practice you get in with a character and the more comfortable and confident you are with your execution, the more it really does feel like an extension of you. And that's a super nice place to be. Not only is it just a joy to drive this thing, to pilot it, fly it around, but you need to have that confidence that your intentions are going to be acted out, that you can rely on that punish, that setup, that move, or just simply spacing, like playing the footsies game. And it all starts with, the body side.
Yep.
I've met a handful of people though that are clearly body players.
Yeah.
Like I've got a buddy that played Sea Viper in Street Fighter 4 in particular. And he was a good player all around. He's a third strike player, and like he's got fundamentals, he's got footsies, he's got all that, and he's got the cerebral part, but he's a body player. Like this is a dude that isn't going to spend as much time in the lab, and really doesn't care to try to condition you to do anything. He is so confident with his execution when it comes to like the seismo feints and being able to set it all up, that he can basically bully you. Like he can just walk up, and the pressure and the threat of his execution is enough to carry his entire game plan. But of course, any one of these, if you become too lenient or too focused on it, it also exposes and creates a weakness for you.
I think Daigo would probably be a good example of a body player as well.
Yeah, I could see
his
that.
Execution is nuts and risky. He takes a lot of risks.
Yeah, I would actually put him as a heart player.
You think so?
Yeah, if anything, and mind you, his execution is sick. It's really, really good. But the very fact that we have the Ume Shoryu, which is basically a hard read from the gut where he just goes for the DP that would normally be super unsafe, but he manages to hit it.
That's definitely a heart tactic.
That's a heart thing. Yeah. But also it makes me think of gosh, what was his name? There was a Japanese player that was really renowned for his execution. I was playing like Minot and could do all of the crazy loops and stuff like that. Yeah, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Certainly plenty of players, out there on that side of things. But yeah, that's what's kind of cool about fighting games, though, is if you want to play a character like Minot, for example, where it's super high execution, but if you can pull it off, you can be a terror. And it's a character that lends themselves to body players, I find myself like I'm really enjoying Guilty Gear Strive. I still play that regularly with a buddy from California.
I saw you playing it the other day.
Yeah. I never really play online ranked or anything, but I just play this one matchup with him. He plays Eno, I play Biken, and we play pretty even. And it's just fun. I really, really enjoy the game. However, Strive has some of the most body focused characters I've ever seen in a fighting game.
I think Guilty Gear overall is just high skill, high skill.
Yeah, there's some of these characters that like I could pick them up and eventually get good with them, but the mountain to climb just to be
it's so
moderate.
Huge.
Yeah, like playing that Happy Chaos, one of the new characters. He's like the gunslinger guy. So complicated. There's so much going on. Yeah, like in some of the other characters they've had in that game where they're like puppet characters like Zato or Jacko, where she's basically playing like this real-time strategy game out on the field with minions out. And
that's a good way to think about that.
Yeah, it's really wild, but the execution is so high. But it's cool that there's something there for people that really dig, just practicing and getting better and executing. They're like, here's your character for that,
There was I'm part of a fighting game chat on Instagram with a bunch of people that play on Fightcade. So it's just like a bunch of people that are like, hey, I'm looking for a player, and you just jump in.
Nice.
I don't know why they don't use Discord, but whatever. And somebody was asking if I wanted to play some games, and I'm like, yeah, sure. What do you want? I'm like, what do you feel like? I'm like, I can literally play any fighting game except for Mortal Kombat and Guilty Gear. And he was like, well, I can understand Mortal Kombat because it's trash, but what's your beef for Guilty Gear? And I was like, okay, yes, Mortal Kombat's trash. I'll say that right now. We're going to get flamed for this for the 5 people that watch it. Yeah. But I was like, Mortal Kombat's trash. I'm not big on Mortal Kombat at all, period. I don't like the game. I don't like the way the game feels. I don't like the physics. There's a billion things I don't like about it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But I was like, but with Guilty Gear, I'm like, it's just not my game. I think it's a brilliant game, but it is not my game. I don't have... let me backtrack. I don't want to put the time and the effort it's going to take for me to get good at one character in any Guilty Gear game in
Yeah.
order to feel like that I actually have a good grasp of the mechanics. I am a
Yeah.
fool when I'm playing Guilty Gear, and I'm okay with it. Again, I think it's great. I think the skill ceiling is amazing. I think the characters are amazing. I think all the mechanics, all the different mechanics are amazing. Just not my thing. Arc System games overall feel that way to me. So most of their games usually end up losing me because I'm like, there's too much going on.
Yeah.
Versus games, Capcom versus games. I like those. Again, not my strongest fighters because there's a lot of skill in that execution for those crazy huge combos.
Yeah. 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 And then those are the ones, you just gotta just hang out, and just be okay with like, oh, I'm just gonna experiment, and I don't have to take it so seriously. But
Yeah.
I think if looking through all three of these kind of archetypes, seeing, what you identify with, and also what's your priority, where do you find fun, what do you want to work on, is a really good way of figuring out what kind of games you should probably play.
Mm-hmm.
For that reason, if you're like, I don't want to spend the time to learn these crazy puppet combos, cool, I'm not going to play Guilty Gear. Or I don't
Okay.
want to learn, these like 45 hit loops. I'm not going to play Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of people I think that try to force themselves to like a game. Oh, my
Because it's
friends
the
are playing
thing or the
this.
new thing. Yeah.
Yeah, this thing just came out. That thing just came out. So, yeah, one way or another, you try to make something work that like it's just not a good fit. But I
Mm-hmm.
think a good way to find what your fit is to ask yourself these questions and to think about these exact things that we've just been going over.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's good.
it'd be interesting to make like a tier list, right? So imagine like body, brain, and heart, and then
Why
say,
don't we do
okay,
that?
yeah, if you're a little more over here, these are 5 games you should check out. If you lean this way, check out these 5 and these 5.
Why don't we do that for our next video? We can get one of those tier list things and we can build it.
Totally, let's do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
should do that. I
yeah,
think
that'll
that'd
be
be fun.
fun.
Because
Yeah,
we're a little over an hour, so we probably need to wrap this up. But
yeah,
just really thinking about like this conversation and everything, like I've been playing this, but I've been playing my buddy Jim. He lives over in London, and of course, I'm in Ohio in America. But Fightcade is amazing.
yeah,
So we play these matches that, yeah, there's some wonky shit going on, but by and large, we can play games together, and it's really cool. But Jim is, our age, early 40s. He's got 3 kids. He owns his own business. But dude had just got back into video games, and he actually was really good at Street Fighter 2 back in the day, but he literally has not played fighting games since Street Fighter 2. And so he becomes friends with me. And so now I'm taking him through this whole tour of fighting games over the last 30 years of stuff that he's never played before. And he's like, fuck, dude, how do you know how to play all this shit? I was like, because I've never stopped playing these games like
yeah.
you. I never have stopped. I feverishly play fighting games. I just on my Neo Geo, I have 40 fighting games. Anyway, um, uh, 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 but I think something like this would be really helpful to him because he doesn't know what kind of player he is in
Yeah, that's
in
perfect.
this modern day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So but how he plays Street Fighter 2, I also know he's not button mashing. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when we jump into a Fatal Fury game, which he doesn't know Fatal Fury at all, he is button mashing. And I see that, right? But like if he's playing Ryu in Street Fighter 2, he's like, sorry, man, I keep picking Ryu. And I'm like, I don't fucking care. Pick your Ryu, right?
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
how to play against Ryu. But I mean, he does anti-airs correctly. I mean, he uses a lot of low sweeps, which I'm not used to like higher level players using a lot of low sweeps and taking those kinds of risks. But he
Yeah,
doesn't know that thing. So it's
yeah.
actually making me think, as a person that actually understands fighting games and can play against better players, it's making me rethink like, oh, well, he's not button mashing. He's still using some scrubby tactics, which is totes fine,
Mm-hmm.
but it's making me play differently because I keep getting hit by things that I'm not used to higher level players doing because they don't want to take the risk. And he's just throwing it out there, you know? So
Yeah.
I think this would be very interesting for him, God, if he has the time with his life, to try to suss this out. What kind of player is he, and what games specifically, because there's a lot of fighting games, what games specifically are going to cater to his almost default player
Yeah.
type? I kind of want like a test for this. Like, what is
Mm-hmm.
your default player mode?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we'll have to think on that a bit for the next episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can come up with a what's the term for it? A rubric.
Assessment? A
Um,
rubric or an assessment? Some sort. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. That'd be
Cool.
interesting. Yeah,
Nice. Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah,
yeah,
we'll look forward to that next time. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we
This-
covered a lot of ground, man.
yeah, I think so. This was a good chat. I liked it.
Yeah. Easy breezy as it always is. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody that stuck around for an hour and 16, 17 minutes, or maybe a little bit more. We
Yeah.
really appreciate you. Leave your comments below. We'll get to those as we can. We'll be posting some more random videos. You've seen some match play videos for us with Samurai Showdown 3 recently.
Yeah, more of that.
I uploaded that random video of just playing some Rayforce on one of my cabs. So there's going to be just some more fun content like that, whether it's just us posting stuff solo, or we, some match play, but of course more podcast and some other cool ideas we've been talking about. Hopefully we'll be doing this a lot more. So thank you for everyone that stuck around, and yeah, love to hear from you.
Sweet. All right. Till next time.
All right, see you everybody.